good to be back with you as we are continuing on in our Bible study through Journey. Now, my name is Kevin Young, and I have the privilege of serving at Christ's Table as lead clergy. And we bring these Bible studies to you live each and every day of the week right now in Lent as we're walking through the Gospel of Mark. Now, if you'd like to know more about Christ's Table, I'd encourage you to check us out. We are kind of dedicated primarily to those people who are on the margins of faith or on the church, people who are disconnected, disillusioned, or even in some cases done with the church, but still want to have a spiritual connection with other followers of Jesus Christ. Many people also use us as a secondary discipleship resource in addition to their local church if they're plugged into one. If you'd like to know more about us, how you can be a part of what we do, you can visit the URL right there. www.christstable.today. We would love to have you find out more about us, sign up for the email list there so that you will know everything that's going on around Christ's Table. But if you'd like to know more about this study in particular, then right there, go.christstable.today/journey is the place where you can go to get all of the resources for this study. There's a reading guide there that helps you know exactly what readings to do on what day so that you can be a part of this journey each and every day with us through the Gospel of Mark. There is also a PDF that gives you a deeper journey into each and every one of the days of this study. You can download that completely free, no emails, no strings attached. We try to give away as many resources as possible, but if you are able to financially support us, or if you appreciate the work that we're doing and want to make sure that we are continuing to have the ability to do these studies alongside of it's alive and my phone is ringing. Nobody calls this early in the morning. What's going on there? If you'd like to help us, then at that website there, you can actually purchase a box of resources that go along with this study. A printed copy of the free PDF is there, as well as a map that'll help show you everything that's going on in the Gospel of Mark. And then some other gifts and things are there, a part of that as well. So if you like the box, you can get it right there at that URL, go.christstable.today/journey. Or if you just want to financially support us, you can give online at christstable.today. Now, enough about that. Let's talk a little bit more about this study. If you've been around with us for a while, then you're probably getting tired of hearing me say this, but this is a different kind of Bible study than most of us are used to, a different one than we've ever done here at Christ's Table over the last, it's been almost 3 years now, I think, that we have been doing this at Christ's Table. So Lectio Divina is a contemplative way to do Bible study. For some people, that's a bit of an off-putting idea. It's a little bit scary, but really it's just a tool to help you contemplate the text in a new way that opens you up to the Spirit of God kind of speaking directly to you. It's a process that is very easy to do. If you'd like to know more about that, you can just Google Lectio Divina or the URL that is right there, go.christstable.today/journey. The PDF study guide there gives all of the information that you need in order to walk through this study each day. And I hope that if you're doing it, that you are finding it life-giving, that you're finding it effective, and that you're finding it a breath of fresh air to other ways and methods of doing Bible study. So today we are in our 11th day, and we're looking at Mark chapter 8, verses 1 through 26. And I've said this several times that Mark's gospel is the shortest gospel, but it has the most content probably jam-packed in there of any of the four gospels. The stories are short, the pace is fast, and Jesus is always on the move. And there is no better example of that than the first half of Mark chapter 8, where we have in 26 verses no less than 4 stories about Jesus. Now, because this is Lectio Divina, I'm not going to walk through each and every one of those 4 stories. I'm just going to share with you a few things that caught my attention, caught my spirit, and then I felt like God was speaking to me in this text. And I hope that you are able to identify some things that catch your eye, that your spirit kind of notices as you're reading through these verses in Mark chapter 8. And I always love to hear what you're noticing, what you're thinking, what stands out to you. Maybe the same things as me, maybe not. So we'll just go ahead and jump in. And verse 1 and 2 of Mark chapter 8 just kind of immediately caught my eye. About this time, another large crowd had gathered, and the people ran out of food again. And Jesus called his disciples and told them, "I'm sorry, or I feel sorry for these people. Now, for many of us, it is a surprise to us to learn that there was a feeding of the 5,000. We've actually already worked through that text in Mark, but there was also a second feeding of 4,000 individuals that is very much the same, but not exactly the same as the feeding of the 5,000. Some people might think that it's a misprint. Some people might believe that, Mark or the details of the other gospels, they mix them up. But the fact that both of these are here in Mark is a pretty compelling piece of data to say that these are two separate events. In fact, I kind of take this feeding of the 4,000 to be what I call a rerun miracle. And sometimes in the Gospels you see this, and especially in Mark, you tend to see this rerun miracles where Jesus tends to do a similar miracle a second time because his disciples did not get it the first time. And this is something that we see in Mark, is that Jesus is consistently trying to get his disciples to understand that they have the power to do things that they could not ordinarily do with power that is not theirs, that is God's. And so you see this in that Jesus is continually trying to break through the hardened hearts of his disciples in order to get them to see that he expects them, that God expects them to do things that they could not normally do with power that isn't theirs. And I might say that he's trying to get us ultimately to understand and see the same things as well. So we have this rerun miracle where Jesus tries to break through their hardened heads and, more importantly and worse, their hardened hearts again. But that wasn't what I noticed. What I noticed was this: I feel sorry for these people. In Mark, I have been continually confronted with the humanity of Jesus and his deep care and compassion for other humans. I'm not sure why this is kind of hitting me upside the head here in Mark, but it is. Maybe it's because we're in a political season. Maybe it's because we seem to be in a time and in a context where there isn't much compassion for other people. People are kind of broken up, fractured into their own communities and their own contexts, and anyone who doesn't look like them, vote like them, think like them, work like them, come from the same place as them, are outsiders. And there's this like wall between so many of us, between ourselves and our people and everyone else. I'll take care of my own. You're on your own. I've been confronted that Jesus just doesn't act or interact in that way. And this, I feel sorry for these people, gave me pause because it made me wonder and think, when was the last time that I've felt sorry for people? And not in a pity kind of way, but in a compassion kind of way, because this is the moment where Jesus is compelled to actually feed these individuals because they've run out of food, because they've been with him for so long. They're in need. Now, he could blame these people for not bringing enough food, for not working in a job where they're able to purchase enough food. He could say, well, you shouldn't have traveled so far from your home in order to come to this place where there wasn't anything here for you. You know what I'm talking about there? But he feels compassion for them. Despite whatever the circumstances were that caused it, his fault, their fault, who cares? He saw them. Christ followers should see people, should have compassion for people that nobody else in the world has compassion for. This should be foundational, non-negotiable, and go without saying for followers of Christ. I don't think it does. And part of the reason for the data behind me saying that I don't know that it does is because I don't know that it does for me. And so I kind of asked myself as I was working through this passage, When was the last time that I he felt sorry for them? When was the last time that I actually felt? It hurts to feel, right? Because whenever you feel, you have to respond. That person on the side of the road holding the sign, that group of individuals whom your preferred media outlet is bashing. When was the last time you felt for someone that everybody around you was saying, don't have feelings? Christians should be swimming against the screen. The screen. Maybe sometimes, right? Christians should be swimming against the stream whenever it comes to compassion and feelings for other people. And unfortunately, sometimes I feel like us are leading the charge in the opposite direction. Don't feel. That's not what Jesus would have you do. That's not what God wants. God takes care of those who take care of themselves. Yeah, I don't think we know Jesus, if that's the point. So Jesus feeds the 4,000. It's very much similar to the previous feeding of the 5,000. Definitely encourage you to read through it and see the similarities and the differences. Jesus then begins to have conversations with the disciples. We move into the second story. Jesus continues to travel, and we run into this moment, which I actually cackled out loud whenever I saw this verse in verse 14 in our reading. But the disciples had forgotten to bring any food. They're out traveling. They need food. Jesus has just made food for all of the people who are following him. They have seen this happen in real time. People show up. They are not fully prepared for it. Jesus solves the problem. You would think that the disciples would be like, we should pay attention and ensure that we don't get in the same bind that all of these other people have just gotten into. We've just had a situation where we had all of these people who had no food. We didn't know what to do. Finally, we figured it out. Thank God that we don't have a whole bunch of starving and dying people. What happens moments later? The disciples run out of food because they forgot to bring any food. And I just laughed because here in Mark, especially, the disciples are three-dimensional. They're real people with real problems, with real foibles. They're not necessarily painted in a perfect light. We're not saints yet. You're not Saint John yet. You're not Saint Matthew yet. You're not Saint Andrew yet. Right now, you're just John Boy, Matt, Drew. They're a mess here in Mark. Not just spiritually, but it feels like also just talk about a ragtag bunch of kids. I think, and many of you have seen this. They're not like these people aren't Justice League level. These people are like A-team level. And what I mean by A-team level, if you've ever seen the A-team, and I'm obviously going back here, it's a ragtag bunch of people who have a whole lot of issues, and somehow or other out of those issues get the job done. But it's messy and comical to watch it happen. The disciples did not bring any food, and this, just as I was reading through this, gave me a bit of peace that I may not be as inept spiritually as I think, in that the disciples are great companions to me in being a reminder that I don't have to have it all together to follow Jesus. In fact, oftentimes I look at the disciples in moments like this and I think, yeah, I may have problems. I may not understand this. Other people may think I'm an idiot. I may not feel like I stack up in any way, shape, or form to the other spiritual people or the other Christians around. But at the end of the day, at least I can say I am not like those 12 guys. And that is some comfort. So if you feel like you're always behind in understanding, if you read these texts and these passages and you think, I'm getting absolutely nothing out of these things, you may still be doing better than the disciples were. Let that be some comfort to you in these moments when you feel lost, blind, completely and utterly like you are in over your head. You may not be in as bad as a place as you think. And as we watch Mark, what you see is that Jesus takes these people who are in worse places, practically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, than you are, and watch and see what he does with them. And I think the journey of following Jesus, the same will happen to you. And hopefully the same will continue to happen to me. So we continue on through these stories, and I love story number 3 and story number 4. And this final story, and I want you hopefully to read all of these 26 verses, but in story 4, Jesus comes to the city where there is a man who is blind, and they ask for this man to be healed. And I thought it was interesting that Jesus actually pulls him out of the town, pulls him out of the center of all of that group of people, the crowd in the city, in order to heal him. And he spits on the man's eyes, and he laid his hands on him and asked, "Can you heal now?" And the man looks around and says, "Yes, I see people, but I can't see them clearly." And he says, they look like trees moving around. And I don't think I've ever really noticed this, but Jesus does it again. Like, Jesus half heals the man. What is going on here? And there's like no commentary on this. It's not like Mark pulls back from this and says Jesus was trying to ensure that the man's faith was wonderful and full. There's no Jesus intended for this to occur so that the readers would be able to understand. There's no commentary from Jesus at all either here about like, oops, sorry. It's almost like it happens and everybody kind of ignores the fact that, and hear me here, I know you're not going to like this framing. Some of you, I don't like this framing, but I just got to say it. It's almost like what happens here is Jesus' healing doesn't work the first time. It only like half works. And they just put this information out there without any feedback whatsoever. And I know that, some people, I've read the commentaries on this. I know that there are many, many explanations on this because, we begin oftentimes with the theology and then we work backwards from that theology into the text. So we begin with the theology that Jesus is divine. Okay, yeah, I agree. We begin with the theology that Jesus is perfect. Okay, yeah, I agree. We begin with the theology that Jesus is God. He cannot make mistakes. Everything that he does, everything that he says is holy, is perfection. Yeah, I agree. And then we work backwards from there and apply that directly to the text, saying, okay, well, Jesus is God, Jesus is divine, Jesus is perfect. Jesus can't accidentally half heal someone, it not work, and him have to go back and do it a second time because he didn't do it right the first time. Like that doesn't match up with perfection, right? So there must be something going on here. And yes, maybe that's the truth, but that's also not the best way to do Bible study. That's also not the best way to use the text because that's ICG, you're reading into the text. You're reading your theology into the text. So what's going on in this passage? I have no idea what the hell is going on in this passage. I have absolutely no idea. I know what my theology and what my belief and what my heart and what my head says is going on in this passage, but at the end of the day, I am trying to shoehorn this passage, frankly, into my theology. And I walk away from this passage and it's like a huge question mark. because the text gives us absolutely no help in trying to understand what's going on here. So the only thing that we can do, frankly, is go to other places in Scripture to try to find something to apply back into this text. And it's okay to do that. But at that point, it's gesture. So what do you do with it? And I think there's some freedom here to understand what to do with it. I don't know. Like, there's a part of me, can I just say, there's like a part of me that really kind of loves the idea that even Jesus doesn't get things fully right the first time. There's part of me that says that it feels kind of nice to think of God not always getting it right the first time. I know for some of us that's like, ooh. But I tell you, those of you who did that, ooh, it's a fun move. Those of you that did that right after I just said that about God not getting it right the first time or Jesus getting it right the first time, I'm guessing that those of you who just bristled when I said that probably believe that Noah's Ark was a judgment on the fact that things were not right the first time. I'm guessing you believe that Genesis 1, 2, and 3, that the fall, things were not quite gotten right the first time with Adam and Eve. And so there had to be judgment because they were designed in a way that allowed the capacity for those things. I'm guessing that those of you who kind of bristle when I say that God doesn't get it right the first time, you're going to have a difficult time, right, in the text whenever you get to Abram, who is arguing with God over Sodom and Gomorrah and how many people are in there. I'm going to destroy it. And God goes, yeah, I am. And Abram, what if there's 50? And okay, I won't. Well, what if there's 4? Okay, well, what if there's 20? Okay, well, if God got it all right the first time, why did Jesus have to come at all? My point being, you can step back from that and say, no, that's not what's going on in this miracle. That can't be what's going on in this miracle. But if you're saying that because your theology says that God can't do anything that isn't gotten right the first time, then there's a whole lot of scripture and doctrine and theology where your theology actually tells you things were not perfect and gotten right the first time. And God had to continually come back and redeem and renew and restore in order to put things back to the default operating system. What's going on here again? I said, I don't know. But I'm just saying, don't immediately jump to the theology and point fingers at others that theirs is wrong without first looking back at the rest of your theology and saying, maybe there are other places where we think this. So what's going on here in this text? I don't know. And sometimes it's a breath of fresh air to come in a piece of biblical text and say, yeah, I just don't know. I got to move on. And that's where we are today, because I'm 24 minutes now past the hour, and it's time for me to move on as well. If you'd like to do this study, find out more about this Lectio Divina, this contemplative divine reading of texts, go.christstable.today/journey. And until tomorrow, whenever we continue on through chapter 8.